Hello, my name is Zayla Ellison. When I was 13, I asked why my sister got her own bedroom, and I got the garage. My mom shattered my arm with a hammer. My dad looked me in the eye and said, "Be grateful." They didn't send me to the hospital. They didn't even say sorry. Later, I found out my mom forged a mental health diagnosis to keep me quiet. My name was scrubbed from family photos, my birthday erased, my belongings burned in the trash behind the house. And when I turned 18, they kicked me out, with debt I didn't create, and a smile like they were doing me a favor. What kind of parents do that? And still expect to be called family? Would you stay quiet, or would you start recording? That night, I didn't just lose a bone. I lost the right to belong. But I wasn't done. I remember the smell first. That night, it was bleach and mildew, the sting of both fighting for space in the back of my throat. My hand throbbed in pulses so loud it drowned out every other noise. I couldn't scream anymore. I had for a while, until my voice cracked, and the only sound left was my own breath, shallow and erratic, bouncing off the cement walls of the garage. I pressed the frozen ice pack, stolen from a school lunch cooler, against the swollen blue mound that used to be my wrist. The towel wrapped around it was stiff from past bleach spills, crusted in corners, and it scratched like steel wool every time I moved. They hadn't given me anything clean. No bandage, no medication. Just a rag and the lesson. Never question the arrangement. I tried to remember the sound of my own name. Not because I forgot it, but because I knew they wanted me to. If they could get me to forget who I was, it would be easier to pretend I didn't exist. Zayla, I whispered, over and over, like a prayer no one else believed in. I must have passed out sometime before midnight. The pain blurred into a kind of numb heat, and I think I dreamed of snow, of somewhere colder but kinder than this place. When I opened my eyes, the garage door hadn't moved. No one checked on me. Not a knock, not even a noise from the kitchen. The next morning I heard laughter through the wall. Callista, my sister, always laughed like she was in a toothpaste commercial. Light, melodic, too perfect to be spontaneous. She was their star. The room down the hall, the extra padding on her chair, the peach slices served in glass bowls, those were hers. Mine were the leftovers, if they remembered. When I finally mustered the courage to push open the garage door and limp into the kitchen, my mother didn't even look up from her phone. "You hungry?" she asked, like I hadn't just slept on concrete with a fractured arm. "I guess," I murmured. She pointed to a single piece of white toast on a napkin. No butter, no plate, no words. I sat down with it like a prisoner on day 6. Callista reached across the table with her perfectly manicured fingers and plucked a blueberry from her fruit bowl. "You should smile more, Zayla. You always look like a rain cloud." My father folded his newspaper, sipped his coffee, and grunted. "Be grateful. You still live here." That was it. That was the whole family meeting. No questions about what happened to my arm. No doctor, no school note. Just toast and silence and a verdict. I didn't belong, but I wasn't allowed to leave either. I learned not to speak, not just at the table, but everywhere. It was safer to be quiet, safer to disappear in the corners of rooms, behind the sound of other people's praise. But silence has a way of echoing back at you when you least expect it. When I turned 15, I started writing things down. Not in a diary. Diaries can be burned. I wrote in margins of textbooks, on the inside flaps of cereal boxes, on the wooden beams under my garage mattress. If someone ever cared to peel back the surface, they'd find everything. The night it all started, the steak, the toast, the hammer, I wrote on the back of a dryer sheet box. This is the night my body remembered what my voice was punished for saying. No one ever found that box, but I knew it was there. I knew I had spoken, even if only to cardboard. Years passed like that. School became my only escape, and even there I kept my head down. I learned how to move silently, how to finish projects before anyone noticed I'd done them, how to get A's without asking for credit. The less visible I was, the safer it felt. And yet, I watched. Every word my mother said that didn't match her actions, every time Callista used my ideas and passed them off as hers, every quiet betrayal folded into a file in my mind. I wasn't stupid, just invisible. There's a difference. One night, I remember sitting in the garage with my busted wrist half healed and my body curved like a question mark, and I whispered, "You won't forget me. I'll make sure of it." I didn't know how then. I didn't have a plan. But I had a feeling, like the hum of electricity before a storm. It would take time, but storms always find their way. They didn't bury me, not yet, but they started brushing the dirt off their hands like the job was halfway done. After the garage, after the hammer, after my dad's voice burned, "Be grateful," into the folds of my spine, things changed, but not in the way someone might hope. There was no apology, no shift in dynamic. It was more subtle, quiet, like a gas leak you can't smell until it's already too late. At school, the air around me was different. Teachers looked at me with a kind of cautious sympathy, the way someone might glance at a kid who once bit another child in preschool. They never said anything out loud, of course. That was never the style in Spring Hill. Here, judgment came in smiles too tight and pauses just long enough to make you question if something was wrong with you. They started calling me moody, said I had trouble adapting. I overheard Mrs. Halverson whisper to the counselor, "She's been different since the arm incident, withdrawn." They never said injured, never abused, just different. Meanwhile, Callista flourished. Of course she did. She got awards for emotional resilience, which was rich, considering she spent most of her time filming TikToks about family bonding, while I sat 2 feet away, cropped out of frame. One afternoon during junior year, while I was cleaning out boxes in the garage to make space for my cot, I wasn't allowed a bed frame. It cluttered the walkway. I found a manila folder buried under some old curtains. It was wedged behind a stack of laundry baskets we hadn't used in years. I opened it expecting coupons, maybe old receipts. What I found instead was a printed copy of a medical assessment. My name at the top, Zayla Ellison, age 12. The diagnosis section was partially filled in. Mood instability, paranoia tendencies, possible early onset psychosis. I blinked. The box next to recommendation, further observation, was marked in blue ink. But near the bottom, under the physician's comments, was something that felt like lightning hitting the back of my neck. No signs of mental illness, no observable behaviors warranting concern. Recommend no further action. And beneath that, in handwriting that wasn't mine, send to school admin, alert counselor, her emotional instability. Verena's handwriting, clean, tight, judgmental script I'd seen on every permission slip she ever signed. I sat there in that garage, the diagnosis shaking in my hands, and felt my entire body go cold. She'd fabricated a medical concern to label me unfit, not because I was a threat, but because I was inconvenient. If she could make them believe I was broken, then she wouldn't have to answer for what she did to me. That folder wasn't just a lie. It was a muzzle. I didn't cry. Not then. The crying had stopped around 13. After that, I learned crying only gave them something to call hysterical. I put the folder under the floorboard where I kept my other evidence. Someday, I'd need it. And as if the universe wanted to sprinkle one last insult on top of that week, my birthday showed up. I didn't expect a party, hadn't had one since I was 9, and Callista accidentally spilled grape soda on the cake. But I'd made an effort. I had spent 2 weeks knitting scarves, one for each of them. My mom liked burgundy. Reuben's was forest green. Callista got lilac with white ends. I wrapped them in brown paper, tied them with twine, and wrote their names on sticky notes. They didn't say thank you. They rarely did. On the morning of my birthday, there was a box on the garage floor. It had a ribbon. I opened it cautiously, like a bomb might be inside. Inside was one of my scarves, the lilac one, only it had Callista's name stitched on it. She'd already worn it in a TikTok the day before. When I walked into the kitchen with the box, Verena didn't even blink. "I fixed it," she said, sipping her black coffee. "It was messy, and it looked more like her color anyway." Callista grinned like she'd just won prom queen. "Relax, Zayla," she said. "It's just a scarf." I said nothing, not a word. I placed the box back on the counter and walked out. Later that night, I pulled the burgundy and green scarves from where I'd hidden them in the garage rafters. I burned them in an old aluminum pie tin and watched the smoke curl through the cracked garage window. If love is giving, then they'd taught me the value of holding back. From that year on, I gave nothing. No gifts, no help with dinner. No comments on their social media posts. I became a shadow with edges. Present, but not participating. I learned to listen, though. I listened like it was survival. And sometimes, listening teaches you what shouting never could. I heard Callista tell her friend over the phone, "Zayla just makes things weird." I heard Ruben mutter, "I don't know what's wrong with her. Maybe she was always off." And I heard Verena, my mother, once say at a PTA meeting I accidentally overheard, "You just have to manage the one that's difficult. Every family has one. The one, not her daughter, not Zayla, just the one." They didn't just steal my things, they stole the meaning behind them. Every gesture I made to belong, they twisted into proof that I didn't. And I let them. For a long time, I thought if I gave enough, they'd see me. Turns out, you can't buy your way into a photo someone already decided you don't belong in. So I stopped showing up in the background. They weren't killing me. They were hoping I'd disappear on my own. I didn't, though. Not yet. I was too stubborn, too curious, or maybe I was just too used to the pain to let it surprise me anymore. It started with the smell of smoke, not the sharp, controlled scent of a fireplace or grill. This was something messier, something wrong. It drifted through the small cracks in the garage door, slid beneath the threshold, and settled into my clothes like it had been invited. I was 17, still sleeping on that slab of concrete with a blanket that never quite covered my feet. That morning, I'd planned to reorganize a few old boxes stacked against the far wall. Most were filled with holiday decorations we never used anymore. One, though, was mine. Or had been. It was a red shoebox, faded. The lid sagged slightly from years of opening and closing, tape rewrapped around the corners like bandages on something too worn to replace. Inside were my things, drawings from middle school, a birthday card my grandmother wrote 2 weeks before she passed, and a photo of me holding a plastic gold trophy for Most Curious in 2nd grade. I never won Most Likely to Succeed, but curiosity felt like something I could own. Only, that morning, the box wasn't there. At first I thought I'd misplaced it. Maybe I'd shifted it behind something last time I moved things around. I crawled into corners, unstacked bins, lifted the rotting insulation near the back panel. Nothing. But then I noticed the faint layer of ash near the garbage bin by the side of the house. I slipped on my sneakers and walked outside. The air was still. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that makes the whole world feel like it's holding its breath. The barrel was warm. Inside, the remains of scorched paper curled like dead leaves. A corner of my 2nd grade drawing, bright yellow sun, lopsided blue house, sat half intact, blackened at the edges. My name still visible in the corner. A torn photo corner, the sliver of my old trophy. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. I stood there for a long while, holding the pieces, my palms smudged in gray, my breath shallow. Something inside me pulled taut, like a wire about to snap. I didn't say anything right away. I walked back inside through the laundry room, still holding the ash-covered scraps. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and cinnamon wax melts, an attempt at coziness layered over cruelty. I followed the sound of a phone camera shutter. Callista was standing in the living room, filming herself holding a box of donation clothes. "Cleansing energy," she said to her phone. "Decluttering toxic vibes." Verena walked by, carrying a trash bag. She noticed the soot on my hands and the papers I clutched. "That junk? It was moldy," she said flatly, like it was medical waste and not my childhood. She didn't flinch, didn't care. I didn't speak. What would have been the point? I turned around, walked back to the garage, and gently laid the burnt pieces on my mattress. For hours, I just stared at them, memorizing what was left. They didn't want to clean the house. They wanted to clean me out of it. That night, my body started to feel heavy. Not tired, not even sore, just wrong. My head burned. My limbs felt distant. My back ached like I'd slept on rocks, which, to be fair, I pretty much had. I tried to sit up, but the room tilted. My breath came slow and shallow. Sweat soaked through my t-shirt, and the chill in the garage bit at my spine. I pulled the blanket up to my chin, but it didn't help. I curled in on myself, teeth chattering. Hours passed, maybe. Sometime before dawn, I must have passed out. When I woke, my lips were dry and cracked. My throat felt like sandpaper. The fever hadn't broken. The light coming through the garage window was pale and flat. Morning, maybe. No one had come. Near the door, there was a paper plate. On it, a single slice of toast, untoasted. No butter, no glass of water. Just sitting there, on the concrete like I was a stray. No knock, no voice. No one checked to see if I was still breathing. That morning, I realized they weren't afraid I'd die. They were just hoping I'd do it quietly. Later that week, once the fever passed and I could stand again without the world tilting, I started cataloging things differently. Not just the physical objects they took, but the absences, the things that should have happened, but didn't. No nurse visit when I missed school. No apology when my things went up in flames. No hug. No warmth. No voice calling my name unless it was to ask if I moved the trash bin. I stopped expecting rescue. Instead, I began preparing. Because somewhere in the hollow ache of that fever, in the gray dust of my drawings, in the silence that followed, I finally understood. They weren't going to fix me because they never broke me. They just wanted me gone. But I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I would leave with proof. They could crop me out of pictures, but not out of what I'd learned to see. After the fever, after the toast, after the silence, I didn't stop existing. I just started watching. Closely. Quietly. Constantly. At first, it wasn't intentional. It was survival. If I couldn't speak, I had to observe. And what I started noticing more and more was just how efficient they had become at erasing me. It started with school photos. Every year, the district would host a family night and post albums on the PTA page, pictures of students and parents laughing at the bake sale, helping at the book fair, sitting together at cafeteria tables like those families on grocery store cereal boxes. In every one, Callista was front and center. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect posture. Verena and Ruben always beside her. And even neighbors, kids I barely knew, got tagged, commented on, shared. Me? In one shot, I spotted my elbow. Another, just my ponytail behind a stack of trays. No tags, no mentions, no captions. But the post read, "The Sloan family. Blessed. Grateful hearts. Grateful hearts." That word again. I scrolled through my own school's website, the yearbook preview, even Callista's social media. My name never showed up. I wasn't even listed on the Sloan family tree that Callista made for a class project that got hung on the front office wall. There were 3 branches: Mom, Dad, Callista, a dog we never owned, a vacation we never took. My name was nowhere. It was like being alive inside someone else's fiction. Then came the TikTok. Callista had this series she ran every week, Dinner with the Sloans. It was all soft lighting and over-exaggerated laughter. There she'd be, walking the camera through the kitchen, Ruben carving roast beef, Verena pouring wine, Callista giggling about how much Dad loves his mashed potatoes. The phone pans across the table. She says, "Here are the ones who matter most." The camera turns just before it reaches me. The comments poured in. "You guys are goals." "Where's your sister, though? She's so lucky to have such a warm home." I stopped watching after that, but I didn't stop seeing. It kept happening. I'd be in the background of group photos that got cropped right before my face. They used my designs for school posters and credited Callista. My birthday came and went without a single mention. No candle, no card, not even a sarcastic remark. Just nothing. I remember lying in the garage one night, staring at the ceiling as the rain tapped lightly against the window. I asked myself a question I hadn't dared to say out loud before. If I vanished tomorrow, would anyone's algorithm notice? That thought lived with me longer than most people in that house ever tried to. December rolled in eventually, and with it, the usual chaos of family gatherings. Verena loved hosting. It gave her a chance to play matriarch in front of extended relatives. The house would be spotless, Callista would be styled like she just stepped off a holiday catalog, and Reuben would play the charming, slightly distant but reliable husband. He was good at that role. Too good. The dining room glowed in golden candlelight. The table was set with cloth napkins and real silverware. The roast sat steaming in the center, and wine glasses clinked before dinner even started. I took my usual seat, not at the table, of course. I was helping, always helping. Always the silent shadow pouring water, clearing dishes, being useful in a way that didn't require acknowledgement. That's when it happened. A distant cousin, Julie, I think, looked up from her salad and asked, "And who's that girl helping in the back?" There was a pause. Not long, but long enough to sting. Reuben answered, without missing a beat. "She's Zayla. She keeps to herself." That was it. Not my daughter, not family, just a footnote. Callista smirked into her wine glass. Verena didn't even look at me. I don't know what moved me, but I walked around to the head of the table. The air grew still. Even the clatter of forks softened. I picked up my glass. My voice didn't shake. "Actually," I said, "I'm Zayla Ellison. I'm not a helper. I'm family." The silence that followed was full of words no one wanted to say. I placed the glass down, sat in the chair next to the window, one that had always been empty. No one objected. No one made space either. But I didn't need them to. They weren't the ones giving me permission anymore. After dinner, no one mentioned it. No one confronted me. But Callista stopped filming halfway through dessert, and when I walked back into the garage that night, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. What I felt was strange, like a small seed had cracked open inside my chest. It wasn't defiance, not yet, but it was something close. In the weeks that followed, I started speaking up, not in fights or grand gestures, but in small, undeniable ways. I corrected the counselor when she called me Callista's younger cousin. I signed my name in big capital letters on group projects. I said no when someone tried to hand me someone else's coat. I didn't start a war. I just stopped surrendering. Years later, when I moved away, people would ask why I never took revenge. The truth is, I didn't need to fight them. I just needed to stop agreeing with their story. That moment at the dinner table was the first time I said my name in that house without flinching. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw a glass. I just claimed space. The next time they tried to take my name off something, I made sure it had a password. But that came later, after the curtains were sewn, after the lights were hung, after I'd spent 4 Saturdays in a row at the back of the auditorium building platforms with rusted tools and bruised palms. I didn't mind the labor. I liked knowing things were real because I'd built them. The school play that year was Our Town. Ironic, considering mine never really felt like it belonged to me. Mr. Ellison, the drama teacher, not related, just coincidentally cursed with the same last name, had picked me as his lighting assistant. He said I had an eye for details others miss. I remember smiling, maybe too wide, when he said that. Maybe because it had been so long since someone noticed what I saw. Every afternoon, after classes ended, I stayed behind. I adjusted spotlights, ran cable, learned the light board by instinct. The theater was the only place I could breathe, dark enough to hide, bright enough to prove I existed. 2 days before the show, while I was loading gels into the overhead rig, Mr. Ellison approached me. He didn't meet my eyes. "Zayla, he started, then cleared his throat. "I've been told we'll need to shift the tech assignments." I waited. "It's been decided that Callista will be running the lighting now. You'll assist," from backstage. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Your mother reached out," he continued. "She had concerns. She said you've been under a lot of stress and the school needs to prioritize safety and, well, consistency." I knew exactly what that meant. "She said I'm unpredictable, didn't she?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. He didn't answer. I climbed down the ladder in silence. When I reached the ground, I walked to the call sheet posted on the corkboard near the auditorium entrance. My name had been scratched out, replaced. Callista Sloan, Lightboard Lead. I ripped the sheet down, folded it in half, and tossed it in the recycling bin by the vending machines. Then I walked home. No one noticed I'd left early. The next morning, I received a text from Eliza, a classmate who'd worked props with me. Didn't know you and Callista switched roles. She looked good running things yesterday. Hope you're okay? I never responded. Later that week, another slap came, this one made of cotton and lace. The school awards banquet was being held on Friday. I'd planned for it, in my own quiet way. I had pulled out my grandmother's old vintage dress from the garment bag where I'd kept it since I was 13. It was cream-colored with tiny rosebuds stitched into the hem. She'd worn it to her engagement dinner in 1957. I'd altered it myself, carefully, spending hours hand-hem stitching it so it would fit me just right. The morning of the event, I laid the dress across my cot in the garage, pressed and ready. I took a quick shower, dried my hair, and came back out to find it. Changed. The sleeves were shredded. The hem uneven, jagged like it had been caught in a paper shredder. A line of safety pins ran down the back like a cruel joke. Callista walked past the garage door that moment, wearing a sleek designer gown, navy blue, fitted, fresh from a boutique I'd never been allowed to set foot in. She stopped, looked at the ruined dress in my hands, and shrugged. Didn't you say that thing was outdated anyway? I didn't answer. Inside the house, Verena stood near the fireplace arranging flowers. You were going to wear that old thing? She asked, glancing at the torn fabric in my grip. You know how dust collects on old clothes. Honestly, Zayla, let it go. Let it go. Like memories. Like effort. Like myself. I didn't go to the banquet. Instead, I sat in the garage with the pieces of the dress on my lap, my hands too numb to cry. I picked at the threads, rewinding conversations in my head. She's a little off. She keeps to herself. We're just trying to manage her. You know how she gets. They called me dangerous, not because I was violent, not because I had done anything wrong, but because I remembered, because I didn't forget. And forgetting was what made everyone else comfortable. So I stopped trying to please them. I stopped asking. I started collecting. I got a cheap notebook from the dollar store. I began writing everything down. Dates, incidents, exact quotes, texts, screenshots. The time Verena told the school counselor I had mood swings. The time Callista used my poem for her creative writing contest and won. The time Ruben told me, this family doesn't need more drama, Zayla. Just blend in. I labeled every entry. I numbered the pages. Each time they tried to rewrite the story, I made sure I had the draft they didn't expect. There wasn't power in screaming. The power was in keeping receipts. And slowly, that made something inside me shift. Not into hatred. I wasn't built for that, but into precision. If they were going to erase me, they'd have to work harder, because now I was archiving. They had their spotlight. I was building my own stage. The truth is, I'd already been doing it. Slowly, quietly, without applause or recognition. While Callista paraded through social media filters and Verena smiled her way through PTA meetings, I was wiring my own power lines, learning systems, saving receipts, embedding proof into silence. It started with the fundraiser. I was tasked with designing the event flyers, signage, and digital graphics. Just a quick project, Mr. Barks, the vice principal, had said. You're good with visuals, right? I was. I always had been. I poured hours into it, created a color palette to match the fall theme, hand-drew leaf patterns, laid out every panel in Adobe Illustrator, on my own, without help, in the school's outdated computer lab, which smelled like dust and burnt toast. On the day of the event, the cafeteria was transformed. Balloons, food tables, and printed signs mounted on every wall. My work, my designs. But as I walked past the welcome booth, I heard the microphone crackle. Big thanks to our lead creative, Callista Sloan, for the amazing visuals you're seeing tonight. Applause, cheers, some clapping from parents who didn't even know who they were clapping for. I stopped walking. The poster I'd designed hung just to my left, taped near the punch bowl. My initials were in the corner, subtle but visible. Z.E. I didn't react. Not right away. I didn't shout. I didn't storm the mic. I did what I always did. I waited. About halfway through the evening, during the open mic thank you speeches, I stepped onto the stage. No one had invited me. I didn't need them to. The principal nodded at me, confused, but allowed it. I leaned toward the mic and said, "I hope you've enjoyed the designs tonight. If anyone's curious about where they came from, the metadata's embedded. You can check the file origins." Silence. No applause. Just stunned, polite silence. I stepped back. No one stopped me. I walked off the stage and didn't look back. Later that night, Callista slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the hallway picture frames. Verena followed her into the kitchen. "She made a fool of herself," Callista hissed. "She couldn't let me have one night?" Verena sighed, not even trying to lower her voice. "You're the face. She doesn't get how this works." The next night, over dinner, Reuben raised his glass to Callista. "For your leadership at the fundraiser, you really made the school proud." My fork paused midair. "I designed the fundraiser," I said flatly, not loud, not soft, just enough. Reuben didn't look up. "We're trying to keep things civil tonight." I set the fork down. "Did you ever love me?" That question didn't come from anger. It came from the place inside me that had been hollow for too long. I didn't ask it to guilt them. I asked it because I wanted to hear the answer out loud, finally. Verena's face twitched, not with sadness, with annoyance. She picked up her wineglass and hurled it across the room. It smashed against the tile, shards flying. "You see what she does?" she snapped. Callista didn't flinch. She smiled, like the chaos amused her. "Drama queen," she muttered. Reuben kept eating. No one answered my question. I left the table and walked to the garage. The air was cold, even for fall. I sat on the mattress, folded the ruined dress I hadn't had the chance to repair, and placed it beside my notebook. I picked up my pen and wrote, "Next time I speak, it won't be for them." That night, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. Something else happened instead, something sharper. The following week, I made changes. I created a new email address, not my school one, my own. I opened a cloud account and uploaded every poster file, every project I'd ever worked on with timestamps and backup versions. I started watermarking things, not visibly, but within the metadata, timestamps, vector signatures, layered password locks. They could steal the image, but they couldn't claim the origin. I took over soundboard duty at the local radio station through a school program. They needed someone to help on weekends, someone with patience and technical skill. No one else wanted the job. It didn't come with visibility or credit, which meant it was perfect for me. The soundboard room became my sanctuary, dimly lit, filled with buttons and knobs and glowing levels. I learned how to balance voices, how to isolate background noise, how to clip, splice, archive. One Saturday, I stayed after my shift and recorded a test voice memo. I didn't even mean to. It just happened. "Zayla Ellison," I said into the mic, my voice soft but steady. Not missing, just unheard. Click, save. It wasn't much, but it was something. A crack in the wall they built. The next evening, Reuben brought up the broken wine glass. "You can't keep pushing your mother's buttons," he said. I looked at him across the living room, where he sat watching a rerun of some 90s legal drama. "Maybe she shouldn't come with buttons," I replied. He blinked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Later, when I was alone, I opened my notebook and wrote, "The mistake wasn't asking if they loved me. It was thinking they were capable." That was the last time I needed their love to validate me. From then on, I wasn't chasing inclusion. I was documenting exclusion. With files, passwords, recordings. My name might be small, but it was permanent. And unlike their stories, mine could be backed up. They slammed the door. I filed the petition. But before I ever saw the inside of a courtroom, I saw the bottom of a debt notice. It came in a plain envelope, no return address, postmarked from a processing center 2 towns over. I thought it was junk mail at first, another pre-approved credit offer I'd never qualify for. But it was a bill. A final notice, actually, $12,438. My name printed at the top in block letters, Zayla Ellison. I stared at it so long my vision blurred. The letter claimed I had racked up the balance on a credit card from some local department store and never paid a dime. I was 17. I hadn't even held a credit card in my hand. I read through it twice. The address matched mine. The phone number was the landline we barely used anymore. The application had been submitted nearly a year ago. My birthday, my social. Then I saw the signature. It wasn't mine. Not even close. It was hers. I walked into the kitchen where Reuben was sitting at the table, nursing a mug of coffee like it was something sacred. I laid the paper down in front of him. He didn't even look surprised, just set his cup down and sighed. "Well," he said, not unkindly, not kindly either. "We raised you. What's a few thousand in return?" He said it like I owed them that money for daring to breathe under their roof, like theft was just parenting with paperwork. I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. The next week, my 18th birthday came and went like all the others, uncelebrated, unmentioned, unnoticed. Except for one thing, I had asked for a copy of my school records a month before, transcripts, recommendation letters, documentation for scholarships. I had planned it out carefully, with the college application's deadline in mind. I came home from school that day to pick them up. Verena stood at the door, arms folded. "You're legally an adult now," she said. "Time to act like it." Behind her, I could see my backpack on the ground inside. Next to it was the sealed envelope I'd requested from the school. I stepped forward to grab it. She didn't move. Reuben's voice floated from the living room. "Callista needs her space. You're strong. You'll figure it out." I looked between them, suddenly chilled despite the warmth outside. "So this is it?" I asked, more to myself than to them. "This," Verena replied, her mouth tight, "is freedom." She shut the door. I didn't knock again. By nightfall, I was sitting behind the First Baptist Church 3 streets down, curled up against the bricks, using my backpack as a pillow. The scarf I'd once knit and kept hidden was wrapped around my shoulders, even though it was spring and barely cold. Inside the bag, one cracked phone, a flash drive, my notebook. I didn't cry. I wrote. That night, under the flickering church light, I scribbled a date, an address, and the words, "Evicted at 18 by blood, not law." I spent the next few nights bouncing between places, a park bench behind the community center, the break room floor of the radio station, where I now volunteered more than I was officially assigned. Donna, the woman who supervised my hours there, never asked questions, but she noticed. She slipped me extra granola bars. Left a pillow by the console chair one night without saying a word. The collections agency called again. This time, I answered. The woman on the other end had a warm voice, like she was trained to sound gentle while gutting you financially. "Miss Ellison, we're calling regarding an overdue balance." "I'm 17, I interrupted. Silence. "Now 18. "But I didn't sign that contract." She hesitated. "You're saying the card was opened fraudulently?" "I'm saying you should ask Verena Sloan who signed it." I sent them copies. The signature mismatches. The timestamp from a school computer showing I was logged in during the time of the supposed application. I sent screenshots, emails, records. I didn't know if it would stick, but I wasn't rolling over. That same week, I filed for financial independence status with the help of a nonprofit that partnered with the shelter Donna connected me to. They assigned me a pro bono legal rep, a man named Jalen, barely 30, soft-spoken but razor-sharp. He asked me to recount everything, dates, names, even direct quotes. I handed him my notebook. "You're more organized than half my paralegals," he said with a dry smile. "I've had practice," I replied. We sat on a bench outside the courthouse as the sun began to dip. The wind tugged at my sleeves. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. I nodded. They took my name, my credit, my childhood. I'm not letting them take the silence, too. That night, I sat in Donna's guest room. Her niece had moved out a year prior, and opened my laptop. I created a folder titled Evidence, ZE. Inside it, subfolders, financial fraud, academic records, digital cropping, audio files, medical notes, forged. I uploaded everything, double encrypted, sent backup copies to Jalen and Donna. I labeled the folder with a date. The day they told me I was free, the day I stopped waiting for their permission. Present day, I look back on that period of my life and don't feel grief. Not really. I feel precision. They tried to wipe me out with paperwork and smiles, but I kept records. That's when I realized silence wasn't surrender. It was the setup. They kicked me out, but they forgot I still had the passwords. The courthouse smelled like paper and fluorescent lights, clean but cold. I sat on the bench outside courtroom B14, my hands folded neatly in my lap. Jalen sat beside me, typing something on his laptop with the kind of calm that only comes from doing something over and over again until fear becomes muscle memory. For me, though, everything felt sharp, real, unforgiving. Like this time, my name wouldn't just exist in ink, it would be the subject of the hearing. I'd walked into that courthouse with two things: a folder thicker than my mother's ego and a voice I'd spent years rebuilding from scratch. I was filing suit against Verena Sloan, my mother, for credit fraud, emotional abuse, and physical injury from when I was 13. I included Reuben Ashford as a co-defendant, citing negligence and complicity. It wasn't just about the broken arm or the forged credit. It was about the accumulation, the calculated erasure, the psychological scaffolding they built around my silence. Jalen passed me a copy of the official complaint as he filed it with the clerk. "You're shaking," he said gently. "I'm not scared," I replied, and I wasn't lying. "Good," he nodded. "You have nothing to prove. They already did that for you." The hearing date was set, just like that. Months of preparation distilled into a paper stamp and a date in June. I left the courthouse lighter, not because justice had been served yet, but because I had finally stepped out of the role they wrote for me. We stopped at a small cafe down the block. Jalen ordered black coffee. I got tea. The warmth of the cup in my hands felt earned, like a small prize for years of endurance. Later that night, news broke. Someone leaked the case filing. And I hadn't posted anything, hadn't even told Donna. But small towns have faster gossip cycles than Twitter, and within 24 hours, Verena's name had been pulled from the PTA website. By the end of the week, the school board issued a formal statement. Pending legal investigation, Mrs. Sloan's role as community liaison is temporarily suspended. Callista, of course, took to social media. She went live, perfectly lit, makeup flawless, eyes misty but not too puffy, just enough to signal vulnerability without sacrificing vanity. "Hey guys," she said, blinking into the ring light. "I know there's been a lot of talk and, drama lately, but I just want to say, families are complicated. No one's perfect. And I love my sister, even if she doesn't always see that." The comments were brutal. "Where was your love when she was in the garage? Apologize to the girl you cropped out for 5 years. Garage girl deserved better." By the time I checked again, the video had over 30,000 views. And climbing. The next day, someone uploaded a montage, clips of Callista's polished family reels overlaid with audio from the podcast I'd quietly launched the month before. Just one episode. Just my voice. I was the extra chair, the wrong name, the mistake they dressed up as charity. The video hit 200K by morning. I hadn't planned it that way. I'd released the podcast more for myself than anyone else. A way to tell my story without asking anyone's permission. But now the story was out, and the silence that once defined me was now a chorus of strangers saying, "We see you." I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I didn't gloat. Instead, I walked. 2 days before the hearing, I went back to the house. It looked smaller somehow. Boxes sat on the front lawn like memories they no longer wanted to claim. Verena stood by the driveway on her phone, yelling into it. Reuben paced near the garage, head down. Callista was in the car, head in her hands, mascara streaking. I didn't stop at the porch. I didn't knock. I didn't ask for anything. I walked up the steps and left 3 envelopes on the mat. Inside each, their statements, their court notices, and a QR code to my podcast episode. I didn't write a letter. I didn't need to. But before I turned, I said, just loud enough for Verena to hear. "You tried to erase me. I gave the world subtitles." She looked up. For the first time in my life, she didn't have words. Back at the shelter, I played the episode on a loop, not for the sound, but for the moment the waveform displayed on my laptop, proof that I had taken something back. Later that week, the courtroom was packed, mostly with strangers, journalists, a few teachers from my old high school. Donna sat near the back, her hands folded over her purse, her eyes steady on mine. The judge listened. Jalen presented. We played recordings, displayed documents, showed metadata. Verena tried to interrupt. Her lawyer tried to claim the injury was unverified. Jalen quietly pulled out my X-ray, signed, dated, filed twice, actually. Once at the hospital, once by me in that garage I was never meant to survive. Reuben barely looked up. Callista didn't show. And when the gavel finally came down, I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I exhaled. Present day. Me could tell you it felt like justice. But the truth is, it felt like closing a door without needing to slam it. They thought a voice was a weapon, I said on my next recording. They were right, but this one wasn't built for rage. It was built to outlast. I didn't win by shouting. I won by not staying quiet anymore. And in the quiet that followed, something unexpected happened. Peace. Not the fairy tale kind you read about in books or see on church signs. Mine was the kind earned after a storm, when your ears still ring, your bones still hum, but you know you made it out alive. After the verdict, after the podcast went viral, and after the last court document was filed, I didn't throw a party. I didn't go back to the house to reclaim anything. I didn't even call to ask about the family name. I moved forward. Verena now lives in a one-bedroom duplex outside of town. I looked it up once. Satellite view, chain-link fence, curtains always drawn. The PTA board quietly scrubbed her profile from the website, her name nowhere in the community newsletters she once dominated. Last I heard, she volunteers twice a month at a church pantry. Some said it was redemption. Others said she needed the hours for court-recommended restitution. Reuben took early retirement from his firm. Or maybe he was asked to resign. No one confirmed it. He still goes to the diner by the gas station. I saw a photo someone tagged on Facebook once. He was sitting alone, black coffee, newspaper folded just so. He looked small. Callista tried to bounce back. She signed on to a new influencer platform, changed her username, rebranded as a resilience coach. The comments never let her forget. Garage girl deserved the room. You cropped her out, and now we see it. Fake healing doesn't hide real harm. Eventually, she stopped posting altogether. They don't talk to each other anymore, which oddly is the closest thing to honesty that ever existed in that household. As for me, I left Tennessee. Portland isn't perfect, but it breathes differently. It's quieter here, but not in the way that buries you. Here, silence feels optional. Here, I get to choose. I live in a small studio above a bookstore. My front door sticks sometimes when it rains, and the hallway smells like old paperbacks and cinnamon incense from the shop downstairs. But the key in my hand is mine. The door opens only when I want it to. I work as a lead producer at a podcast network that specializes in trauma storytelling. Every week, I help other people find the words they were once told to swallow. Every weekend, I teach a workshop called Voice Back in the community center 3 blocks over. It's not therapy. I'm not a therapist, but it's healing just the same. My cat, Junebug, sleeps on the windowsill every afternoon around 2. She showed up one rainy day and never left. I like that about her. I have friends now. Real ones, not the kind who whisper behind folders or glance away in gym class. Friends who bring soup when I'm sick, who send memes at 2 a.m., who listen, really listen, when I talk. I drink my coffee with oat milk. I read poetry in the morning. I hang art on my walls, even if it's crooked. No one corrects me. No one calls it clutter. Last month, I got a letter inviting me to speak at a TEDx event. The organizer had heard my podcast and asked if I'd share my story. I hesitated at first. I worried that going back into that space, being vulnerable, public, might drag old pain to the surface. But the difference now is, I know how to hold that pain. I know it doesn't own me anymore. So I said yes. The auditorium was warm, the lights softer than I remembered stages ever feeling. My palms were dry. My voice didn't shake. I stepped up to the red circle on the floor and took a breath. When I was 13, my mother broke my arm for asking about dinner. I began. When I turned 18, they said I was strong enough to go. And at 21, I stopped asking for a room. I built one. There was a pause, then applause, then a standing ovation. But the part that stayed with me happened after, when a woman in her 60s came up to me in the hallway. Her voice cracked as she said, "I was the extra chair in my house, too. You gave me language I didn't know I needed." I held her hand. Just for a second. After the event, I walked back home under the soft glow of street lamps. My heels clicked against the sidewalk, the city buzzing low in the background. Inside my apartment, I placed my bag down, kicked off my shoes, and picked up the old scarf, the one I'd once knitted, torn, abandoned, and eventually repaired. I folded it neatly and laid it on a small wooden shelf beside a black and white photo of my grandmother. Then I sat down at my desk. I looked at my hand, the one they fractured. The bones healed a little crooked, still slightly stiff in winter, but they held the microphone, they held pens, they held truth, and they held me. I reached over, pressed record, and said into the mic, "Forgiveness isn't about letting them sleep. It's about letting yourself rest." Then I smiled, not the polite kind, not the fake one for photos, but something deeper, earned. They gave me silence. I made it echo. Sometimes, the loudest power comes from choosing not to stay silent anymore. Zayla's story isn't just about pain, it's about the quiet strength it takes to reclaim your name, your truth, and your future. Have you ever felt erased by the people who were supposed to protect you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful family stories like this one. Your voice matters here.